I'm so excited. This project is my baby. I went to Dignitas and said, please let me host a women's tournament, and it was a very quick yes. I mean, we've supported women's teams, women's content creators for a very long time. We went to Twitch and talked about what we want to do. Brought in Nerd Street as well because obviously they're fantastic at production, and we can't admin an event that our team is going to play in as well. So they're
Sure.
obviously adminning it, and then I think unofficially, I don't know if this has been officially said, just based on the numbers, I've been around women's events for 20 years now, and I believe the previous Game Changers was the most watched women's event of all time. That was not on the front page of Twitch. Ours will be on the front page of Twitch, and
Let's
then
go.
we also
Nice.
will be including, can't say the names yet, but some pretty big name co-streamers as well will be able to put it on their channels. And so I
Yeah.
think I'm really hoping that this breaks that record and this becomes the most watched of all time.
We have probably what's going to be my favorite part of the show today is that we have a returning guest. Obviously, it was probably a couple months ago now. We had Heather Garozzo on the show. There was known as Sapphire to talk just a little bit about observing. And I feel like we were pretty early on in this sort of story in terms of how we built up to Masters in Reykjavik. And there was still a lot of VCT. The challenges stuff was in full swing. And we were just starting to talk about how important observing was in the game of Valorant and how it was crucial in order to not only just maintain the current audience but bring the new one in and really help to showcase some of the individual talent that we're blessed to have in Valorant. So we have brought Heather back. Heather, so nice of you to
Woo!
join us again. How are you?
Hi, it's good to be back. Nice to talk to you guys again.
Absolutely. You obviously we just on the back of Reykjavik, and I'm joined obviously by Vensley and Ryan here, who
What's up,
you know,
Heather?
yeah, obviously
Hello.
Vance didn't get to be there in person. He was working that show remotely, but you went out to Reykjavik as part of the observing team, which is fantastic. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that all came along? Because the whole thing, the whole Masters event looked like a gigantic undertaking, especially given our current conditions globally.
Yeah, it was quite the process. I think Riot contacted me, I want to say in February, which is, one of the earliest I've ever
Yeah.
been contacted to work an event. Maybe that's not saying too much for 3 months, but it was great to have that heads up. Obviously, there's a big process involved to get there. I believe the country started loosening the rules very close to the event, but prior to that, we had to get all the paperwork done and many COVID tests before we
Mm-hmm.
went, when we landed, which
And your brain tickling,
the
I'm sure.
the Iceland airport was by far the worst COVID test I've had in my life. Everyone's like, this is borderline illegal to probe your throat and your brain and your nose like that. So that was probably not one of my favorite moments. But
Uh-huh.
Riot did a great job, obviously keeping us safe. And so we quarantined for the first couple days, which was kind of boring. And finally, finally, once we got over to the venue, I mean, we were just blown away by the stage. It was absolutely gorgeous. They did a beautiful job with the lighting. I think it was actually held inside just like a track and field stadium. So to
Nice.
see that transformed into the beautiful stage and um, all the rehearsals of the walk-ins and players walking through the smoke, and that was amazing. Our observer setup was by far my favorite that I've ever had, and I've done many events over the years. We were like, normally we're in a production truck, or I've been put in bathrooms before.
Yeah. I've cast from a bathroom too. Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel
Oh
that.
my god.
So we were in a little balcony over the stage, which means we get to hear the players, and that's exciting. Obviously, no crowd, but being able to actually see the players while we're observing and hear them reacting was pretty incredible. But it was, I mean, it was one of the most amazing events to be a part of. The production team was fantastic too, just taking our feedback, and hopefully the audience saw that each and every day the broadcast got better and we introduced new things. But it was absolutely amazing to be a part of.
That's awesome. So just to tie on to that, because see, this is what the setup you're talking about. You're on the top of the stage, instead of being in the production truck that I remember Stefan actually tweeted out as well of what it looked like within the production truck. So what was it like for you actually on the top of the stage with Prius and with Yeti, and the communication between you and the production there? Because if I'm not mistaken, there was also you have the Riot Worlds production there that's in a truck, but he also had like Albert that was working with Alex from California, managing the production side with the talent and stuff like that too. So were you involved in terms of like the communication between both of that as well? And what was that like working on a live stage?
Yeah, I mean, we've got this fancy comms panel that we can talk to anyone we need to talk to. So we'll hear Albert, we'll hear Joe, the director, we'll hear Stefan, the producer. We have to communicate through headsets only because it's just the observers up in the balcony. So we got the VIP
Oh,
seating. So
Do you have
yeah,
people remotely pumped into that as well on that panel? So you can speak to California from there as well. That's
exactly. I
insane.
can speak to
That's so sick.
California. I don't think we had a call in to the casters, but we can hear them. So it's pretty funny when they they start talking about the observing, and then I DM them on Twitter. Hey guys, I can hear you. They're always
Casters never realize this, by the way. They also don't know the production can hear them before the show goes live. They don't understand that their mics are open
all the time.
fucking time.
exactly. So Alex, watch what you say.
Stories they must hear.
Listen, yeah, I'm
Stories they
sorry, I
must hear.
apologize. No, I'm kidding.
Seriously, and this was an issue in Overwatch where the observing was very difficult because of the game, and like early on, like casters were like, "Man, the observing's really rough today," and you get it in your ear. Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, and then it's only gonna snowball from there because you're already like, all right, I'm crap, and then it gets even worse.
Actually, to get on that, because we were talking about like, okay, well, we can hear each other and stuff like that too, and as we joke around, it's like, yeah, it's added stress. Did you find any added stress like the first time you're observing like a big stage once again, because it's been a while since we did some because of COVID and all that too? I'm assuming we didn't have the opportunity of doing big stages over the past year with CSGO, but what was that like for you, right? Because I feel that at least for me, when I was doing Masters 2, I gave myself some unnecessary stress. Did you feel that way as well?
Yeah, I think the first day, especially, there were some nerves. Um, Obviously, there were a number of rehearsals leading up to it, but some things as simple as like the observers are actually the ones that pause the game at the start. So we
Hmm.
pause it just to make sure the agent select has enough time and the casters have enough time. And I'm
Yeah.
always so scared that I'm gonna hit that like end game button right next to
Oh,
the
we've seen that
pause.
happen. We've seen that
Yeah,
happen.
that's
Changed that, didn't they?
Yeah.
They did change it in the live game, but we used like a tournament realm
Oh
server
no.
because they were all LAN servers. So that scary button was still there. And yeah, you just never know. I mean, there's the way we set up the observing is we like to have the numbers on the radar. It just makes it easier to observe, but we don't want that to go out
Yeah.
to the broadcast. So the main observer has two PCs, and the second one has to be following the main one. It's just like, oh, what if my elbow hits something and it stops following and I don't notice it, and you're just watching a guy look at a wall. So there's a few nerves the first day as you
There
go
is
through everything. But after that, I was actually probably less nervous after that than many events, just because you don't hear a crowd reacting.
Mm.
In some of the events, if you miss something as the observer and like you see 3 kills on the scoreboard or on the kill feed, and the audience is not reacting, you're like, oh no, I really messed something up here. So actually being in kind of complete silence probably takes away some of those nerves.
Yeah, I know a lot of casters who read the kill feed of the same thing. They see 3 kills and they don't react. They're like, oh, did I mess up? Did I miss something huge?
Exactly.
So do you have a function? Do you have a function where you can follow? Can you observe an observer in the Valorant
Yes,
sort of?
yes, you
Okay,
can. Which
that's
is,
huge.
it's good, especially in this world where we have to be remote. And then
Mhm.
I've done a number of events for European broadcasts, and I don't need to be there, so I shouldn't say that because I like to travel, but I really don't need to be. I can observe here, and then a producer sitting thousands of miles away can just say follow whatever Sapphire does for her movements, and it will put that out to the stream.
It also means there's a world where I don't know if this will be necessary, but casters, especially online, will be able to be in lobby observing an observer and getting their observing instead of being in a vmix call, which is like sometimes it's actually hard to see who's on the minimap because you get your vmix feed is like 720p.
Yes.
And you're not in the game. Obviously you need slots for casters being. That's a whole other story, but I mean,
Exactly.
I like that
It maybe adds a second or two of delay, and this way like you
Yeah.
you avoid that. The casters can sit there and see what you're seeing. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I,
Go ahead,
I wanted
Randy, go
to
ahead.
ask, like, because we saw lots of different games, lots of different teams. What was the most challenging game to observe? Because there's various different play styles and tempos of teams. If the answer's the final, then anything other than the final, because I imagine doing the final is pretty scary because it's one of the a lot of people's just naturally going to be watching it, so you want to make sure that you're doing the best that you can. But were there any other particular games that were hard to observe just because it was the teams were just doing some weird stuff that it caught you by surprise, perhaps? Or
Well, it's probably the North American teams and their stupid Astra and Viper and Sova and post plant metas, which it's frustrating because as an observer, like you're looking at 2 dots on a radar and when those dots are gonna connect, and then there's gonna be an engagement. And so you're trying to show all this action happening there. Meanwhile, Sova's halfway across the map flying in a dart, and that's what actually ends the round. So we probably missed a few of those. We hadn't done as much observing in the couple weeks leading up to that, and that's kind of when that meta evolved essentially. So we missed that practice, and each day essentially we would show up early into the studio and watch back the demos and just say, okay, this team is firing their Sova darts across the map. Let's keep an eye on them. Yeti is a fantastic like cinematic observer, so he'd do a good job of calling things out, because I, as the main observer, I'd have to be actively watching the main action, and he gets to fly around and look for other things. He was actually the one that helped point out a wall spam that Lakia did.
Lakia did in Haven.
Yeah, exactly.
Sewers.
So like we didn't get exactly the spam, but we got close to it where you at least saw, something's happening, And I think there was another spam on Haven that actually killed
killed the Killjoy ult in Sewers. I think it was.
It's Sewers from
everybody was like, wait, is that a thing? And it just turned out like if you put the Killjoy ult against the wall, then it would wallbang. It was a really weird one, but
that was that one.
I think you even put on Reddit like, shit, I didn't know it could do that. But
so that's the one we got.
There was
close,
that one.
But we still missed it, and then
the other one I think was a plan into B, and he wallbangs from Sewers into B for the diffuser.
That's what it was. So Yeti had called that. He's like, this guy's doing something weird. Like, get over there quick, because I normally just wouldn't notice that on the radar, and we made it like just in time.
What do you very quickly? What do you think? I know in I don't know if they still do this in the LCS, but this was, I can't believe we actually caught this one. This is this is from Twitter.
This is from their own perspective, I think.
We ran back to the production truck after, and I was actually upset at Prius. I said, "Oh, Prius, like I missed that. Let me go get that clip." Because I wanted to put it on Twitter, not for the internet points, but just because I felt like I missed something. So I wanted to give it back to the community. And this guy runs, because I'm still observing. He runs to the truck and then clips it himself and posts it.
The real weasel. It's not Ryan Central.
Exactly.
It's fucking Prius.
Exactly.
Were there? I mean, I'm surprised Priest didn't just send his drone over there while he was I really loved the photo of him. Obviously, he had his drone for the volcano shot, which looked incredible, of course. Just we'll take a quick sidebar as well. Did you guys get to do stuff in Reykjavik? Like, did you get to look around very much? Because like obviously, I think for optics' sake, like I don't think that like the fun stuff you get to do right now when you travel gets publicized, because you don't want people going like, I'm vaccinated, this should be there to work, not you travel, let's go. Did you guys get to do some fun stuff? Like, you got any Is there any memories or sort of any things that you really enjoyed doing outside of work in Reykjavik?
Yeah, we did. We got to go a number of times once we fell in love with it. We went to the Sky Lagoon, which the Blue Lagoon is like the famous one. And
Mhm,
that's about 45 minutes away, and we made it there eventually.
mhm.
But the Sky Lagoon is in town. It's a we took the scooters there. You know, it was a 10-minute
Dope.
scooter ride
Oh, that's awesome.
right on the ocean, and then it's like 35 degrees Fahrenheit outside, so it's cold. But this lagoon is like 100 degrees Fahrenheit. There's a bar in there, and so
No.
we did that nearly
Jelly.
every morning before matches. We would go, yeah, chill out at the lagoon, and it was
That's
quite
sick.
relaxing. Yeah.
That's fucking awesome. I'm fucking mad jealous about that for sure. To get back onto the observing part too, Heather, because you were saying how, you were the main observer, Yeti was flying around. So technically, because we know right now that Riot most recently, they added 10 observer slots, right? For you, are you still taking only 2 observer slots? Because I know Prius is there as well, but it's only 2 people working at a time and you rotate that out? Or how does that work exactly? And also, you also added Helium Umbrella into the crew as like a replay op. So how does that all work out in terms of like observing from A to Z with that?
Sure, it's a good question. So, we would have there would be 2 admins in the server too, so that takes up 2 spots, so it's down to 8. And then the primary observer, and then the follow observer, because I recommend, I said we want to use the numbers.
Yeah.
That takes up 2 slots. Yeti takes up 1 slot, so I think we're at 5 here. 2, 3, 4, 5, and so that leaves 5 extras. And so that would be the second observer, and DJ and I, to be fair, we rotated slots each day.
Okay.
But the second observer would be the person capturing all these extra angles. So we were actually able to pull in the player feeds directly from their PC, and then
Yep.
depending on certain settings that they were or weren't using,
Some
we
of
could
them were.
Yeah.
yeah, we could either
Some of them
take
were weird.
their feed, or we had up to 5 extras that we could take from the observers. The only problem is that when someone dies, it switches their POV. So at the start of the next round, you have to put it back on that person. Um,
Oh, okay.
so the second observer would be the one, as the round restarts, they're clicking
Relatching
through and
every-
relinking everything.
Yeah.
That was different in the first day. The first day we were actually like live observing the second person to try to get every single angle, and that was very difficult. So then we started pulling in feeds directly from the players' PCs, and then we did have this guy named Healy Umbrella. He used to be a caster, and then he worked at E-League for Counter-Strike, and
Mhm.
he's done a number of Blast events too. And he is like by far, he's a fantastic replay operator. It's incredible how quick he can cut those replays from all the different player POVs. So he gets all 10 players fed into his little machine and very quickly outputs the best clips of the round.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's wild actually just how involved this whole process is. I mean we had a long chat with you about observing last time, and I reckon we'll have more conversations about this in the future. But you're it's on your little bio there, but you're obviously the VP of talent at Dignitas, and recently you and Dignitas are partnered with Valorant and Nerd Street Gamers to create the biggest women's tournament in Valorant. I think it's a pretty succinct way of putting it. Obviously, Game Changers NA presented by Dignitas is just around the corner in partnership with Verizon as well, which is fantastic. I've seen you tweeting about this a little bit. I think we covered it briefly, but this is a $50,000 event between June 24th and 27th. I'd love you to talk us through this, because this is huge. I don't think I've ever seen this. I've never seen this in other titles. So how exciting!
I'm so excited. This project is my baby. I went to Dignitas and said, please let me host a women's tournament, and it was a very quick yes. I mean, we've supported women's teams, women's content creators for a very long time. We went to Twitch and talked about what we want to do. Brought in Nerd Street as well, because obviously they're fantastic at production, and we can't admin an event that our team is going to play in as well. So they're obviously adminning it, and then we put together this entire event and talked to Riot just to get the approval. And they said, hey, why don't we make it a VCT Game Changers event too, which just elevates the status of it. So
Awesome.
it will be 32 of the best women's teams in North America, and starting in a qualifier. It goes down to the top 8. I think unofficially, I don't know if this has been officially said, just based on the numbers, I've been around women's events for 20 years now, and I believe the previous Game Changers was the most watched women's event of all time. That was not on the front page of Twitch. Ours will be on the front page of Twitch, and then we also will be including, I can't say the names yet, but some pretty big name co-streamers as well. We'll be able to put it on their channels, and of course we get to include a lot of those numbers in our final viewership. And so I think I'm really hoping that this breaks that record and this becomes the most watched of all time.
Oh, man,
for a long time too, hopefully.
I hope so. I don't know. I want it to keep growing, but I also like holding that record. So.
just break your own record, Heather. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, I really hope other sort of developers take notice of this and try and sort of move to foster this kind of initiative. You also, I saw you tweet earlier today as well. Here's some of the details about it as well. This is the qualifiers as it comes through. But you also did tweet that there's still a chance for those who want to co-stream this event to apply right now. Yes,
that is correct. I would say for the most part, I want to approve everyone. Like I just kind of think that's the future of the events, being able to watch something with your fans and talk about it and add your own voice. So unless you do something completely offensive against women in gaming, we're likely going to approve you. We just want this to be a big celebration of all the teams. I used to, years ago, I was like, oh, women's events, that's hurting the progress of women in esports. But like, you look at what Counter-Strike did, and they fostered an incredible competitive community for women. And now, like, you guys would not believe how many women play in Valorant. It's so weird to go into a matchmaking game and there's 3 other women, which means there's more women than men in the server. And that happens way more often than you think. And I think it's because a lot of these women's events exist. So I think it's a good thing. Eventually I'd love these women to like graduate and play in the co-ed events, and maybe they're winning, the next Masters. But I think this is a great first step.
100%. And just to actually try to have a small comparison between, you mentioned it, how CS does it with CSGO or even 1.6 back in the day, because, you have been a champion yourself back then too. When you're looking at these, for example, ESWCs, where all these teams all get together, was there some sort of like qualifying process to have all of these women's team from different regions come in together, for example, because you were, let's say, representing USA pretty much at that point. There was another women's team from the USA. When you're looking at Game Changers right now, you have at least 32 teams just from North America looking to compete against each other right now. So was there a process back then to try to qualify? It was just like first come, first serve for a slot, or you were invited? And how does that differ from Game Changers right now today?
Sure. So I would say the majority of the big ones, the ESWCs, the Intel Challenge, the Girl Gamer Festival, those were qualifiers by region. So based on the number of teams that exist in your region, you either get 2 slots or 1 slot, and then the top 8, maybe 16 would come together at some kind of international event. There's been other events like Copenhagen Games, which is open to anyone. Really only 2 North American teams went, CLG and Dignitas. Just it's expensive to go to Copenhagen. But I imagine that will be the process in the future of the Game Changers events across the world, and some kind of, top 2, top 4 will make it to an international. At least that's what I hope to see.
Of course, something similar to Masters would be amazing too for a circuit for women too. So I think it's off to a great start thanks to yourself.
In all of the different regions as well, because I think Europe hasn't had like a fully fledged Game Changers yet. There's a lot of like Rick's GG tournaments at the moment, but nothing quite to the level of that. You mentioned something when you said earlier on before like Counter-Strike that you were not so much against women's events, but I feel like it's a common thing that people say when it comes to separating women from tournaments in their own one is kind of detrimental to increasing the amount of women playing competitively. What was it from like Counter-Strike in your experience that changed your opinion on that? Because I feel like that's a common retort against these kind of tournaments, and I feel like you've probably got a good way of wording why it's so good. And I think you sort of mentioned it as well with more women are more confident to play competitively. And I'm sure a lot of the people that play in these tournaments would never have played in a more of a mixed tournament like First Strike or any open qualifiers, right? So what was your opinion on that, and how did it change over the years?
It was really just the quantity of teams that eventually started competing in events, and comparing Counter-Strike to other games. So, some of the events like Copenhagen Games I mentioned, there would be upwards of 50 women's teams competing in that. Um, I couldn't tell you another I watch a lot of esports. I feel like I'm very in tune what's going on. I don't think there's a single other esports where there's 50 women's teams in a single event. I'm not going to throw other games
I've
under the
never
bus because
heard
I
of
work
it.
for an esports team. But as I'm actually interviewing a lot of these women's teams, to talk about participating in VCT Game Changers. All of them come from different games, many other FPS titles, and they had not so nice things to say about those communities, and that they did absolutely nothing for the women's scene. There was a lot of casual players, but no one stepped forth and said, "We're going to create something specifically for women." And as a result, now those women have left those communities, and they're going towards Valorant because Riot has done such an incredible job creating this community.
They've been really good at like supplementing it, right? Like I think it was just a normal Nerd Street gaming tournament that when we were doing ignition events back in 2020, they were the ones that said, we're gonna just take this seemingly normal tournament and make this like the established ignition event. And I think it was super cool to see Riot do that and continue to do that as well. Not only for like players, but also a lot of like women casters as well, being able to be more involved and feel confident to do those tier one events, and for Riot to notice them and go, we like you, we want to incorporate you into our Valorant Champions Tour overall. So from our perspective, like as casters, to see that, and from casting with people like Jess and Moxie, it was cool to see them get those chances as well.
It's great not to just see that, one token woman there, for diversity's sake. It's like there's truly like great women that have fantastic analysis. They're great players, and they're including it in the broadcast because the value they bring to the broadcast. It's been amazing.
Heather, you said you've obviously been interviewing a lot of teams, right? Recently. I'd love to know if there's like any really great stories you can share, or any of these teams that you're really excited to see succeed or compete. Obviously, I'm quite sure you love to see the best for Dignitas, but I want to know, as someone who is, wanting to, get more involved and sort of, sort of watching stuff like Game Changers, who I should be looking out for, what great stories you've unearthed so far.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll preface with that, in that I'm interviewing every single one of the qualifier teams. Most events wouldn't do that because you obviously
Yes.
want to focus on the big names, the ones that are going to bring views. And I completely understand that as someone that works for a team. But I think part of this initiative was to tell the story of the smaller teams, the ones that are just getting started. But with that, there's a few that really stood out to me. One team, three of them are going to they're part of a university program to learn to be game developers. And that's
Dope.
how they found their teammates. And they're like, yeah, we're going to play competitive. And they're actually pretty good. I think they're all immortal ranked. And I just thought that was amazing. I mean, when I went to school, I would never meet another female Counter-Strike player.
Yeah.
That's impossible. So the fact that there were three of them from the same class and they formed a team is amazing. So I think that's great. The team that I am most excited to watch besides Dignitas is GX3. And Silly's gonna know that name. It is the most historic name in women's esports. Stands for Girls Got Game. I think they started competing in 2002 in Counter-Strike, led by Miss Alice Liu.
The
she
return
was
of
always
Alice.
my hero growing up.
Yeah.
And so she has put together a very interesting roster. I can't say one player because some contract things going still, but it's a great mix of the boomers and zoomers, I guess. There's one girl named Jan, and I had played with her a bit, and she doesn't really get the concept of strats because why? You could just hold W and just out frag these people. It's amazing. And then Alice is bringing her her history, her experience playing in the biggest women's events ever to that team. And they are like by far my favorite dark horse. I don't think a lot of the other women's teams are going to know them because they haven't played in a ton of women's events, but I'm confident they're going to come in and kind of surprise and get into the top 8.
8 titles that she's won. How many titles?
I think so, something like 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was my question really for like a lot of the people that are coming in to watch this. I think the main narrative is Cloud9 White and their dominance so far. Obviously, they've had roster changes, so they could be a little bit worse in this tournament. You mentioned Girls Got Game. Are there any other teams that people, if they haven't followed recent game changes events, that they should keep tabs on? I mean, TSM, obviously Dignitas, Gen G have just put together a team as well officially. Like, who are the ones that you think are going to be rooting for top 4? Maybe even winning it over Cloud9 White if you think they don't have it.
Sure. So TSM and CLG Red are probably those next 2 right after Cloud9 White as some of the favorites that have placed it well in a number of women's events. Gen G is certainly up there. They have people from a number of different FPS backgrounds together. The 2, besides GX3, who's also unsigned, the 2 unsigned rosters, which are going to be top contenders, are Built Butter and Man I Love Fwogs.
Yeah, Man I Love Fwogs are so good.
They are great players. They don't have any competitive experience, I think, before coming to Valorant, but they've been grinding. They've been placing very well in these smaller women's events. I would love to see them signed to organizations either before or after this event, but there's some good names. You know, I'm having a hard time picking my top 8. I've earmarked about 12 right now because we're trying to make some content for the final weekend, and we just want to get it done in advance, so we're not rushing the final 3 days.
Sure.
But I've got 12 right now that I think could make it.
That's awesome.
We were told not to use the acronym of Man I Love Frogs. It's just the iconic like NA, like together we are terrific. Like it's good to see that lantern, I suppose, being carried along.
Yeah, it's I'll let you guys figure it out yourselves what the acronym is, but they've got a really cute logo. So a lot of people have followed along.
That's great. Yeah, I'll figure it out eventually. I might have to write it down first, Heather, before I can. I'm a bit of a himbo, but that's my problem. Heather, thank you so much for your time today. I just obviously with that coming up, you're going to be quite busy, but I'd love to talk about what's next for you, including that over the next few months.
Yeah, let's see. We've got we've got our women's team in the office too, which is actually really exciting just to get a team together and boot camp. It's been, a year and a half since that has happened. So I'll be working with the team, creating a lot of content with them. We're doing some pretty cool new things. Maybe NFTs might be trending now. I don't know. Might be doing something like that with them. We're launching a women's initiative at Dignitas, including like power rankings for the different women's teams, listings of all the different. Because right now it's kind of hard to find a list of all the different teams and their rosters. And
sure,
obviously Liquipedia is fantastic, but I want to go another layer than that. So we're doing that. Hoping maybe I'll be back for Masters 3 for observing. Riot has done a good job about asking me in advance. So I'm hoping I get that call soon. And then I guess the last note is I've been working tirelessly on a Bible of observing for Counter-Strike and for Valorant, including videos, articles, like all the different things you need to know about observing. I don't know when I'm going to release that. It's taking time, but as I sit on planes or in hotels, I try to crack away at it.
That's the question I wanted to ask towards the end. Like, obviously, with people like Uber and Van Silly, there's a lot of like advice and do and don'ts for casters. Obviously, there's a lot of observers still trying to work their way up to get involved more. Yeti coming from doing Nerd Street stuff very early on to being able to do this. And there's plenty in Europe. So what's like your big advice for those that are wanting to improve their observing overall, or just to get involved in it first and foremost?
Yeah, first off, to get involved, there are way more events than there are observers, especially if you look at different collegiate events, different Discord servers that have 10 mans. Like, just put yourself out there. Not everyone agrees with this, but I volunteered my time for free when I first got started, just because I needed more experience. there's no Go TV. You can't just hop into a Valorant game and observe. You have to find an in somewhere. So try to find that in where you can get some practice, and just like you would as a player, watch demos back. Work with a lot of the casters that are trying to get their names out there too, and say, hey, if you're going to cast this, I'd love to observe it for you. They're going to have feedback as well, because they're talking about what you're showing. Casters are probably the best people to give feedback on you're observing. There's a lot of opportunities. There's more opportunities than there are observers, so you're going to find your space somewhere.
I mean, that's I really look forward to seeing that sort of Bible in time. I'd love to again continue to sort of pick the brain of an observer. So no rush, Heather, but looking forward to seeing.
Working on it.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us, Heather. It's a pleasure to have you back on the show again, and all the best, and obviously good luck. Not you'll need it with Game Changers coming up. We can't wait to see
Thank you.
how that event will go.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good day.